I'm Andrew Damelin, sitting in for Bubba O'Neill. So excited for today's guest. His top 3 priorities in life are family, faith, then basketball, in that order. He is the head coach of the McMaster men's basketball team and a proud Chinguacousy chief. It's Patrick Tatham. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
First vivid basketball memory is the first question I like to ask. You grew up in Toronto, moved to Scarborough, went over to Brampton, 12, 13 years old. Where in that part of your upbringing is your first vivid basketball memory?
Oh man, I probably could say a bunch, but like the very first is probably sitting on the living room couch watching my dad watch basketball, the New York Knicks versus the Indiana Pacers, or the New York Knicks versus Chicago Bulls. Back in the day, it's like Patrick Ewing versus Reggie Miller, or John Starks versus Michael Jordan. So for me, those days, it was like 94, 95, 96, meant everything to me, and it's still ingrained in my brain, and that's why I always say Michael Jordan's one of the best of all time, and that made me want to play basketball.
The mid-90s is where I live with basketball. The Knicks, I'm thinking of, I don't know, Charlie Ward, Derek Harper, Charles Smith.
Great names.
And that was a gritty team, a Pat Riley coach team. You've talked about your style of play being tenacious and gritty. What part of your upbringing sort of infused those values into how you played the game?
Yeah, I grew up in Scarborough, so Scarborough wasn't like the easiest place to live, but I also watched my mom and dad, who are immigrants to Canada, and they had to work tirelessly just to provide for myself and my 2 younger sisters. So just being able to watch them on an everyday basis really kind of ingrained in me to kind of work and be tenacious at everything I do, whether it's on the court or off the court in the classroom, or in a office where I have to work and do small things to allow myself to have some wins or success on a basketball court.
So you've had 2 strong parents, immigrated from Jamaica, met in Canada, and infused these values in you. Now, at the same time, as you've spoken about in a previous podcast that we talked about before we went on the air, you fell on some hard times, let's say, as a kid in grade 7. And your life, so many points in your life, it's just serendipity to me. Like, there's the values that you're trying to, to espouse and to embody, but there's also, in grade 7, you get in trouble with the law, as you say.
Yeah.
And part of your, I don't know if punishment's the right word, but is community service. And you get placed in a basketball gym as part of your community service. At that point in your life, how much was basketball ingrained in you, and how much did what you did in that school sort of propel you into being a big basketball dreamer?
There was, there's I think about the tipping point. That was my tipping point, to be honest with you. I think it was a perfect intersection in terms of being in trouble, but also loving basketball, and then finding a way to kind of mesh the 2 together so that I'd have success, and being able to do community service work through the sport of basketball in my Malvern Community Town Center was amazing. And truthfully, once I was doing it, it made me want to be a part of a team, and that was the first time I've ever been a part of a team. And I guess the rest is history, because I went on to play high school basketball and play prep basketball, or you can call it OBA basketball, and so forth and so forth. So that first entryway to a team sport for me was everything, and I attribute it to me kind of getting in trouble and having to pay some community service work.
So you go to Brampton, you're a star at Chinguacousy. I went to Vaughan Road Academy, not quite the program,
nice.
But we played against teams like Bathurst Heights, where Denham Brown, who played in the NBA, was drafted by the Sonics. And so I was quasi part of that scene. But can you take me inside the Chinguacousy gym for a second? When a road team walked into that gym and you guys are warming up, what is a road team feeling walking into that arena?
Yeah, I think they were tough times back then when we had any visiting team visit us at Chinguzi Secondary. That year that we had a really good year, we went to OFSA. I actually had about 7 or 8 guys transfer to Chinguzi. One guy being 7'5" and Jerry Skalowski, another guy being 6'5", Sefton Barrett, who actually went on to play at Central Michigan, is doing some training now in Brampton. We were a really good team, and I feel like all the teams, when they saw us, it was like, oh no, this is trouble. We're just going to try to survive where we can, and what a great year it was. I'll never forget those high school days. And I still keep in contact with many of my teammates to this day.
One of the coaches I've covered for the Raptors 905, and he was assistant with the Raptors, Patrick Tatham. When he was praising his players, he'd often use the word swagger, some sort of chip on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. Was that part of the identity of your team and you specifically, not only in high school, but when you moved on to play at Cleveland State?
Yeah, actually, fun fact, in high school, my high school coach was a man by the name of Tony Sims, Anthony Sims, but he goes by Tony Sims. One of the youngest players to ever play on our national team, senior men's national team. He was my coach, and he used to breathe confidence into me and swagger into me, saying that, hey, listen, you're just as good as all those other guys that are a little older than you, and the Denham Browns, the Kevin Messiahs, the Tristan Martins, but you just got to believe it. And you're going to be a big fish in a small pond, so there's no need to go anywhere else and play. Just play here and understand that you're as good as anybody else. And I took that to heart, and I figured out how to be as best as I possibly could and earned a scholarship at Cleveland State. And though I was a big fish in a small pond, I was going to a bigger pond now, and I was just another fish in a massive pond. But I feel like the days in high school and having that confidence led me down a path at Cleveland State that allowed me to be a very good role player, a team captain, a Horizon League defensive team member. So it kind of boded well for me and allowed me to have 4 really good years at Cleveland State.
And you started most of all of those 4 years. And you talk about your defensive prowess, but I had one date for you, and I'm wondering if you could spot what happened on that date. It is, I believe, February 5th, 2005. February 10th, 2005.
Oh my goodness, February 5th, 2005. That is so long ago. Oh my gosh.
It's the glory days.
What team is it? Do you have any idea?
So February 10th, you're obviously on Cleveland State.
Yeah.
Now, okay, it was against Butler.
Oh my gosh, yeah, right, nice, great times. I think that might have been on the road at Butler. And that's a memorable day in my own mind as well, because that was my career night at Butler. We hadn't beaten Butler as a team or a program for over maybe 10, 12 years. So going into Hinkle Fieldhouse and playing with some of my older teammates, I was actually on a sprained ankle. There was high expectations just for myself as a first-year kid into his second semester, and we go into Hinkle Fieldhouse and essentially upset Butler on their court. First time in I want to say it was 18 years that we've ever beaten Butler. And that was a memorable time for sure. As a matter of fact, Brad Stevens was sitting there as an assistant coach, which I guess you can call it 15 or 10 years down the line. We meet up, and I actually work for him and the Boston Celtic organization. So it was pretty cool, pretty full circle moment.
20 points, 5 boards, 2 for 3 from the three-point line. For us lay people, can you describe what it feels like to be feeling it?
I don't know, you just get to this space, you're in a zone, and it's like anything you put up just kind of falls. But my game has always been predicated on my defense, and I get really amped up when I do get some defensive stops, or I get a deflection or take a charge. And that game, I'll never forget, they had a young man by the name of Polk, I think his name is. He was a really good player. And I just took great pride in, like, you know, just stopping in possession after possession, which ended up leading to me doing well offensively, and we came out with the W. So that feeling that you get when you're in the zone is undescribable. You just know when you're in it, and it just feels like everything or anything you do on the court that night just kind of goes your way. So it's a magical feeling for sure.
In your 15 years coaching now, can that defensive desire be coached?
I do think so. Yeah, I actually do. And you can kind of find a way to kind of tap into it with some of your guys, and hopefully it spreads like wildfire amongst maybe 5 guys or 9 guys that are playing in the game that night. So yeah, I do think that it can be coached, but sometimes it's innate in some guys, or 1 guy or 2 guys, and then it kind of starts to spread.
So you finish your 4 years at Cleveland State, then you go on a little journey as a pro. You play in Switzerland, Germany, Qatar, and Syria.
Yeah.
In that time frame, are you ever, if maybe you're on a bus, maybe you're in some remote area, maybe you're in some rundown gym, do you ever look around at some point and ask yourself, what am I doing here?
I don't think so. To be honest with you, I love basketball so much to this day, and I'm like in love with basketball. I think my kids, 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son, I wear this T-shirt at home, and they're like, "Daddy, your T-shirt says basketball is my girlfriend." So, I'm in love with my girlfriend in basketball, and it's been an amazing journey. Whether I was in Syria, Qatar, Germany, or Switzerland, as long as I was somewhere where the ball was bouncing and I was on a court and I got to do what I love to do, then it didn't really matter where I was in the world. And I think that's kind of some beauty in the basketball, in the sport of basketball, that that round ball can take you anywhere you desire, so long as you put in a lot of work. So you're part of this coaching tree, the Roy Rana coaching tree, an absolute legend in Toronto, Eastern Commerce. Mm-hmm. I actually played with Jermaine Anderson, Eastern Commerce legend. We were 13 years old at the JCC. He actually played like a little 4 or 5, if you could believe it. Nice.
So Roy Rana has a presence about him, and you became an assistant at Ryerson under Rana for 4 seasons, I believe. And then Coach Rana took a sabbatical, and you were able to step in as the interim head coach. Before we even get to that incredible season as the interim head coach, the biggest lesson that Roy Rana taught you before you took over for him for that 1 year?
Well, the biggest one for sure is to use my voice. When I felt like when I came in as an assistant under Roy, I was very much so like lead by example. So I'd pull guys aside, talk to them on like the low key, but I didn't really use my voice. And Roy commands his team to kind of listen and hear and execute. And I still remember a couple of the players saying, "PT, like, we love what you do on the court, we love what you say, but like sometimes we want to hear you at halftime, or we want to hear you in a huddle." So that in itself really helped me to kind of hone in on my own coaching skills, and understanding that like your presence and your voice can kind of really make a team come together and kind of play for a greater good. So one lesson for sure is using my voice.
Players have a ton of praise for Coach Rana. They also call him a pain in the butt to play for, and brought the best out of them. Was he a pain in the butt to coach under in the best possible way?
No, actually, you know what? He just holds people to a very high standard, right? And what if you're working with him, he has his own standards, and you got to be able to kind of match it. If you're not matching it, then it's probably just not your cup of tea. And I feel like his standards aligned with my standards. I just really wanted to be a head coach. I know he wanted to be a winning head coach. So just kind of meshing the two together meant that I just had to keep myself as clean as possible when it came to preparation and deliverance with what we're trying to do, or execution, and just like your work, your body of work. If you're going to do something, make sure you're doing it clean and professional. So I learned a ton from him, and I mean, it helped me because he went on to coach with the Sacramento Kings. He's now coaching in Japan, and he's coached our national team, and I think I've done everything he's done, and I'm just continuing to do more, I guess.
So you move on, we don't move on, you take the interim head coaching job, and I imagine no one is truly ready to take any head coaching job before they actually get it. And I saw an interview of you before the season, you were kind of shaking your head, you were asked about the style of play, and you're like, well, we'll get up a ton of threes, is what we'll do, and it looked like you were trying to search for yourself in that small interview. What did you learn that you couldn't have possibly known before stepping into that head coaching job?
Oh my gosh, so much. You learn so much on the fly. It's like you were thrown in the fire, and I'm thankful it was with a bunch of kids that I had already known and I recruited. But I mean, they say in basketball, especially in coaching, you never know how hot it's going to be until you're one seat over. Like when you're that guy making all the decisions. So that interim year when I had to make all the decisions, I had to learn how to manage my staff. I had to learn how to manage the end of the bench, the guys that weren't playing as much, and had to learn how to manage support staff. So it was really a fun year. And I still remember it to this day. Like we shot a ton of threes. We had some really good players in Adika Peter McNeely, who's now a head coach, who played for our national team. Aaron Bess, who's still playing to this day.
I love Aaron Bess.
Man, oh man.
I mean, for some reason, no one's learned that he only goes to his left.
Yeah.
But he just finishes with his left hand every single time.
Absolutely.
Just a legend, Aaron Bess.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a perfect storm for me because I had some really good players that year, and it really helped that I was a young enough coach to really motivate and inspire those guys, but then they also helped me out by just playing so extremely hard.
So I believe it's the next year you take a professional leave to go to Maine and be an assistant coach.
Yeah.
In Nick Nurse's biography, he mentions that when he stepped up as an assistant coach for his first talk with the Raptors, he knows that the players are judging them, especially the professionals, and he was nervous for it. Do you remember prepping that first talk before you went up and tried to coach up professionals in Maine?
I was nervous as can be. Oh my goodness. I was shaking out of my boots. My voice was cracking. Oh, I was so nervous. And I was very fortunate to have a couple Canadians there with me in Ryan Thompson, who's the head coach at Lakehead University, and Scott Morrison, who was the head coach at the time, who's now with the Utah Jazz. And I was so nervous. I had the first two scouting reports against OKC Blue and the Texas Legends, and oh my gosh, I was horrific. And it took me about 5 games to really kind of get under my belt. And I'm grateful to Scott Morrison because he's kind of really been a mentor for me to this day. And he came up to me after one game at home. We played, never forget it, we played the team from Indiana. In any case,
Fort Wayne Mad Ants?
Fort Wayne Mad Ants, and we lose at home. And sure enough, he comes up and he says, "Hey, dude, come on, man. Like, let's go. Like, I wanted you here for a reason, but you seem like you're a little shy. You look like you're kind of scared. Like, these dudes are just the same age as you, or maybe a little bit younger, but they just want to hear what you have to say. Just deliver it with confidence and be right." And I was like, "Okay, great." So yeah, I mean, that first one is always a tricky one, but once you get it out of the way, then I think the rest is smooth sailing. So long as you kind of, get right with how you deliver things and how professional you are.
So now you've gathered a pretty nice array of experience over those first 7 odd years of coaching. The McMaster job opens up. And so how did it come to be that you end up interviewing for it and getting the job?
Honestly, it was I'm a very big on faith, and I had faith that at some point in time, one day, if I were to leave TMU, I was going to go to York or I was going to go to McMaster. Those were the only 2 jobs I wanted to leave for. Thankfully, I had Maine Red Claws, and by chance, the actual head coach at the time at Mac was Amos Conley, had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I don't know if I'm going to take this job for a little bit longer, but I'd like you to come home and be an assistant for me and then maybe take over as head coach. Got back and spoke with himself and Glenn Grunwald, who was the AD at the time, and he basically said, like, look, I might not last that long, so you might be ready to take over this program right now. And I'm thankful. I'm very thankful to Amos, because without him, I probably wouldn't be at McMaster right now. But at the same year, York University opened up at the same exact time, but I had already accepted the job at McMaster, and I'm enjoying my time so far at Mac, loving it.
So this coaching journey is not linear. You know, you win Coach of the Year in 2015-16 as an interim coach. You come over to McMaster a year later, and there have been some good teams. There have been some 500 teams. This year's been a struggle. The team's 1-10. And you're mentioning coaches before you saying, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to last. I imagine the coaching profession for so many it can grind you down. Has that joy, you know, waking up, planning a good practice, or making a good game plan, has that joy ever wavered throughout your whole coaching journey?
Yeah, no, great question. I don't like, again, that big round orange sphere that we dribble and shoot. I love it so much that, like, there's just so much beauty in the game of basketball that, like, the joy can never be removed from me. I just, whether I'm an assistant coach, head coach, a manager, I honestly just enjoy being around the game of basketball. So right now we're in a very deep lull of the season, or maybe even in my career. But I do think at some point in time when you're down, you're always going to come up, and you just got to make sure you got 10 toes down, and you're just grounded, and you figure out what can you do to make a change so that you can actually start to go back up, because you can't stay down forever. It's not even a question, but at some point something's going to give, and we'll be right there to capitalize on it.
And similarly to that joy, you know, coaching the game, are you still able to watch a game, maybe not even a U Sport game, but like an NBA game? Does the kid still come out in you when you're watching an NBA game? Love
NBA games. I watch them every single night. To this day, I was watching one this morning. I love documentaries more than anything instead of the game. So if I'm not watching a basketball game, I'm probably watching a basketball documentary. And there's a great documentary that I watched just recently. It's called Clutch. A lot of the playoff teams from last year. And yeah, I love the game, and you know, anywhere that LeBron James is, that's where I'm watching. So right now the Lakers aren't the greatest, but I'm still watching, and I love watching OKC because, you know, we have a local hero in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who's killing the NBA right now, and it's just nice to watch and see a Canadian at the top of the West, at the top of the NBA right now.
So yeah, LeBron, he made his return. The Lakers got a win last night. But for Shai, I imagine you watched the NBA Cup game on Saturday against the Rockets.
Absolutely.
When I'm watching Shai, Hamilton's finest, I'm just kind of making like a stank face every time he makes a move. He's got the biggest bag you can imagine. He scores from every single spot on the floor, the most unassisted baskets in the NBA. When I watch him, I just marvel. But you've coached the U19 Canada team. Perhaps you've seen Shai in the grassroots system.
Yeah.
Could you have seen anything close to this coming?
No, not even close. Now, let's not. I don't want to mistake myself here, but I still remember when he was 16, 17 years old. And I was a team manager for our senior team, just like, you know, doing training camp up at the flight deck in the old ACC. And he came in, himself, RJ Barrett, and they played against the senior guys. They just got to train against the senior guys, and he was on fire, completely doing whatever he wanted against Corey Joseph. And I was like, whoa, this is unbelievable. And at the time, he was like 6'4", 6'5", and completely unknown. So to see where he is right now, he might be the best player in the NBA, might be the best player, best guard in the world. It's remarkable, and it's definitely, like, you could have seen it back then, but he's just kind of transcended into like a whole different kind of monster.
And there's this maturity about him when he speaks to the media. He's clearly a leader on this team, and he and Coach Daignault are clearly like the two top voices that bring it to everybody on OKC. They got title aspirations. And who knew when, the Clippers traded for Paul George and got Kawhi that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to turn into this, but he brings an amount of joy just to that team. And listen, Coach, I'm glad to see that you're still joyful despite what's been a bit of a difficult season. What should McMaster fans and Hamilton fans look to see in the second part of the season when everyone returns from the winter break?
Consistency. I think we've just got to be a little bit more consistent as a group on and off the court. And I think holding the guys accountable over this little 4 or 5 week break will really help us to kind of dig a little bit deeper to find a way to be a little bit more consistent. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna get rolling here in the second half, and I've told our guys, like, we're down, but we can come up, and it's some way, somehow, we're gonna make the playoffs. We just got to figure out how we're gonna do that. So they know that the theme of this second half is gonna be consistency, and we're just gonna find a way to kind of just string something together, and hopefully that spurns into maybe like a 9-2 second semester record, punching us into the playoffs, and maybe making a Cinderella story with the losing record, but we'll see.
There's still time to get the ship back on track. Yeah. Listen, Coach, thanks so much for coming in today. Thanks so much for your time, and good luck on the rest of the season.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
That is head coach Patrick Tatham of the McMaster Marauders. That's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. If you know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast wants to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, please comment. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you, and we'll see you next time.